We had a look at relationships, so one specific tab we have in the data model. Now it's time to dive into another very important part of this data model, the data view. In the data view, we will be able to interact with our tables, our data set that we created, and specifically we'll add additional calculations here to dive deeper into our data analysis. And for this, we will encounter a specific behavior of Power BI Desktop. Power BI Desktop is a single tool, obviously, but it comprises two different languages. And these two languages can be differentiated by their description, of course, so what they are about, and by their application areas. If you think back about the query editor, I mentioned this M language already, and I told you that this is the language, the code, so to say, behind our functions that we applied. Let's have a closer look at the M language again. The M language is the Power Query formula language, that's the official definition of it, and it is made for data transformation in Power BI Desktop, but also in other tools like Power Query, which is an Excel plugin, just as a side note here. You saw these transformation capabilities already, and this also brings us to the where to apply step, because it should be applied for data preparation before you load the data into the data model, because transformation means that you work on rows, columns, you combine tables, all these things we did in the last module. In the data model now, we don't have this M language. Here we are in a different section of Power BI Desktop, and in this section, any kind of calculation or interaction with the tables and the columns will be done with the so-called DAX language. Now, what is the DAX language now? Well, DAX stands for Data Analysis Expression Language, and it is the language, the code used in the data model. It is made for analytical data calculations, like calculating averages, for example, and it is kind of comparable to Excel functions. So if you're having an Excel background, you find yourself familiar with the DAX language quite fast, typically. Where do we apply the DAX logic, the DAX code? Well, we apply it to create insights into our data. I mentioned this average calculation, for example, and therefore it is applied in our data model, so the part in the course we are focusing on now. It is very important to understand, though, that these are totally different tools, independent from each other. One tool is in the query editor, the other one in the data model. Both follow a different syntax, a different logic, and different application areas. This was the theory though. Let's have a closer look in our course project now and play around with both the M language and the DAX language.